One of the ways that antinatalism can be promoted as a lifestyle choice is by promoting and hoping that there will be a technological development in robo-companions. That is to say, um, robots or androids that will be the companions of men. I have to be careful here not to talk about human reproduction on YouTube because it is a forbidden subject. And so I know that I have to kind of mind my words. But certainly, over the last, I don't know, 10 to 15 years, there's been an enormous expansion in research and development into creating female companions, mostly female robo companions. And there are some male, but it's mostly for female replacement. And the materials have been researched, and they're getting better and better. Robotics are getting better and better, even artificial intelligence. And one day there's going to be a convergence of all these technologies: AI, skeletal robotics, and micropneumatics, and silicon skin replacement material. And these are going to develop female uh, um, robo companions. And of course, the main advantage for having female robo companions, robotics, female androids, is of course they don't get pregnant. That's the main thing. And they don't have any desire to get pregnant. That's the other thing. And, obviously they don't answer back, and they don't want to have a different life. They don't want to be a drain on the human spirit, which is represented by man, of course. And I think a lot of men are really seriously considering the alternative to female companions, which is to have female android companions instead. This actually is not science fiction. This is coming up to be science. And of course, but then two things need to happen. One is the convergence of technologies, and the other is, of course, making these technologies accessible to the majority of people. At the moment, these uh, female robo companions, or female mannequin companions, as they are at the moment, are extremely expensive. Although prices are coming down more and more, really, to the price of a second-hand car. But of course, these types of mannequin companions, and again, I have to choose my words very carefully here. Mannequin companions are basically, that obviously they can't think and they can't talk, and they can't do anything really. But a lot of people are anthropomorphizing these companions to such an extent, really, that they're almost like replacement human beings. In fact, it's possible to go back to a time when, in fact, I remember the actual male doll, which was brought out, called Action Man. And this was a military explorer doll for men, for young boys. And, when I found that I could sort of really relate to these dolls in a way that I couldn't relate to my parents or siblings. And I could talk to them about lots of things, and it was quite fun. Um, but a lot of people are not really enamored of the idea of developing anthropomorphic attitudes. That is, thinking that the doll or the mannequin female human companion, think of that in that way. It's can't be bothered. They want basically more realism, more physical realism, certainly. But also, as I say, talking about convergence, they want these androids to be programmable, so that they can respond in a limited way to commands, and that they can perhaps be a source of inspiration by connecting to Google, for example. And certainly, we're looking basically at robotics. Certainly, they can trundle around the house and do housework and things like that, and basically to replace the female altogether. Um, because the trouble is with the human female, is that they tend to get pregnant and reproduce. In fact, this is their biological imperative. Whereas female companion androids obviously don't have the same uh, base biological need to reproduce. They basic, but they are also attached to the male. They're a good companion to the male, even though they don't want to reproduce. So that the male has a lot of freedom to express himself. And, because the trouble is with females that are becoming more and more sort of liberated, is they don't, provide for their menfolk anymore. And whereas the female android replacement would be would be so much more convenient, also safer as well, in terms of sexual hygiene. And I think really that it is a matter of time. I mean, the convergence of robotics, AI, and artificial materials for creating physical appearance and skin tone and skin and physicality. They do have to go. They are a bit of a ways away, actually. And of course, they do need to come together to create an android. It probably isn't that far away, but as I say, of course, eventually it needs to catch on, and so it isn't just a rich person's foible or peccadillo. It becomes something which is really quite an option for a lot of people, lot of men to consider, because the trouble is with Second Life and virtual and even VR. Let us say VR, uh, VR human reproduction, is that it isn't absolutely real. Um, but on the other hand, perhaps things don't have to be exactly real to be acceptable. I mean, if a blind man has never seen a red rose, does the rose have to be red? I mean, it's possible basically to replace women altogether and really not miss them. This is the essential, rather crudely put point, but it is a point nevertheless. And then you don't have a problem with reproduction at all. Obviously, vasectomizing men is the cheapest option, of course, for men, and of course, being as it's reversible, you're not actually interfering with human sexuality. You're basically just seeking to stop human fertility. And of course, a lot of people say, well, that these are two different issues. I don't think actually that they are as different as people would like to hope they are, in the sense that I think that human sexuality is ultimately connected with reproduction. I know it's used for selling products and services. I know sex is used for that, and the human appearance is used for that, and even the sort of motherliness of woman is used as a advertising image. But the sort of mother image, as well as the maiden image, not so much the crone actually. The crone is not used to sell products and services. Well, not only in particular niche markets, such as computer games. You've got like the sort of, well, the Valkyrie, I suppose it's the maiden, but you don't actually get many selling archetypes for the crone, and yet the crone is beyond reproduction. So in a sense, when women no longer are able to conceive, then it becomes safer to court, safer to have a relationship with, as far as men are concerned. Um, anyway, possibly, technology can sometimes be a violation of Occam's razor, in the sense that it provides a solution which is actually more complex than a straightforward common sense solution of vasectomizing men and giving them tax breaks for doing so. This would be a much better option, a much cheaper option, and perhaps much less controversial. Um, but I think the trouble is a lot of men also want to reproduce and have children. That's the other problem. So there is a case to be made, in fact, for replacing men with sperm banks, so that women can then make informed choices about their reproduction, about whether they want to reproduce or not. So it is a race between gender. It is a war, in fact, between gender. It's a race to see which gender can actually annihilate the other. Talking about, in the future, a vast future, hundreds of years' time. But perhaps there will be eventually one gender will actually gain biological control of the species. The species will be defined, in fact, by its gender and by the genders that it actually creates, both socially and biologically. But I simply think that antinatalism as a lifestyle is certainly enhanced by the serious consideration of female android companions.